The UN estimates that by 2050 there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish.
It's estimated that 100 million tons of plastic are generated globally each year.
Local authorities have been forced to close beaches due to mounds of plastic rubbish.
Hello, I'm Tammy Ven Dange, an executive turned social entrepreneur. It's clear that Mother Nature has a plastics problem, but I think it's time to quit talking about the problem. Instead, let's talk about the solutions. This is a business podcast with an environmental mission. And as your host of the Plastics Revolution, I'm going to chat with the innovators, change makers, and fellow entrepreneurs who are leading the way in fighting plastic waste. Along the way, we'll also share tips and practical ideas so that you too can be part of the solution. This is the Plastics Revolution. In this episode of Plastics Revolution, I chat with Michael Elias of MANRAGS, a men's essential clothing line and textiles recycling service. Michael was in the baking industry when he and his wife Tina decided to sell socks through a subscription side hustle. The business did so well that he eventually left his job to focus on it full time. Yet soon afterwards, Michael realized that his own business was adding to the landfill problem. This started the next phase of the business, which they're undergoing now, to close the loop on textile waste. I hope you enjoy this episode of Plastics Revolution with Michael Elias of MANRAGS. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me more about MANRAGS. What does your business do, and when did it get started?
Yeah, great. So we launched MANRAGS 4 years ago. My wife and I found a bit of a gap in the market for premium quality essentials that would last more than a few wears. And the essentials specifically that we're talking about is socks. I was wearing some quirky and fun, colourful socks to work in my corporate life, and realised that meetings became about not how to make billions of dollars from customers, but what colour socks are you wearing today? And where are your socks from today? And so after a few washes, we realised that some of the socks that we had weren't of great quality, and it didn't matter what price we were paying for those socks, whether it be $5 or $40. They were not of a great quality. So we set out on a mission to, one, produce high quality premium socks, and the other thing is how do we ensure that we provide consumers with a variety and a range of socks, which made it very convenient and easy for them to access. So on a Thursday night, I would get on a plane. I would tell my workers I was working from home, and my team that I was working from home, and I would get on a plane. I would fly out to Egypt to source manufacturers for Egyptian cotton socks. I would have my meetings, and I would be back at work on a Monday morning, and no one would know anything about what had happened over the course of the weekend. We did that probably a handful of times, and then we finally found someone we wanted to work with, and who was happy to work. We were just a startup, and we were just launching a brand. Found someone that we wanted to work with, and we then decided that at that time, it was 4 years ago. So at that time, subscription models were starting to become more prevalent globally, although not in Australia where we are based. And we decided to launch a premium sock subscription brand for men, because the sock market was more focused on men at that time here in Australia. Uh-huh. And the focus was, one is a subscription model is great for recurring revenue. Socks are an essential, so it's not the type of thing that you buy once and wear the same socks quite regularly. We have a full drawer of socks. So yeah, we launched MANRAGS, at the end of 2015, and when we launched, we being a digitally native brand, so completely online, we found that we had a really good response very early. And actually, quite funny enough, we began growing in Singapore faster than we were growing in Australia.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, which was really, really interesting. And, we didn't know what to expect, but we absolutely did not expect that to happen. So, there was a few things for us to work out. We hadn't actually considered logistics of international operation back then. So we worked all of that out, and, fast forward a couple of, a year or so, our community said, hey, we love your socks, and why don't you launch underwear? And so we then pioneered matching socks and underwear, and men's boxer briefs with matching designs that were available monthly or quarterly through our subscription offering. And we continued to see great growth. We grew into today, I think we're in over 70 countries around the world.
Wow.
So we're on this ride. We had great growth. And then early last year, we began questioning our purpose. Now, we had seen, great, revenue growth, great customer growth. Our community had grown, as I said, to, over 70 countries around the world. We, all of our social media and everything was growing, and we're creating a lot more awareness, a lot more advocacy for our brand and our products. And we began questioning our purpose. And last year, something happened where I probably have one of the largest sock drawers in the country, potentially the world. And I came to clear out my drawers, which is a problem all of our customers and subscribers have, and realised that there was nothing you could do with old worn socks here in Australia. Mm. The only solution is to put them in the bin. And we thought to ourselves, is there a solution? Can we implement something? What can we do here? Because we don't want to encourage textile landfill waste.
Yep.
And, we found ourselves, looking into textile landfill and the impacts on the planet and the impacts on the environment, then, the further impacts on things like, every kilo of textile landfill, generates 3 to 4 kilos of greenhouse gases. And so it's just this flow-on effect of, really bad stuff. And obviously we're a very interested bunch at MANRAGS, and we thought to ourselves, well, what can we do and how can we provide a solution here? And so we worked very hard and long, and we found a solution for sock recycling. And last year we launched the world's first sock recycling program, which sees us, give the community, not just our direct community of our consumers, but people all over Australia, the opportunity to recycle their socks and keep them out of landfill. And we've just seen absolutely amazing response from people. We identified an issue that some people may have never actually considered, because socks are only a small little item. But what we found was people who have been recycling with us now for the last 7 or 8 months, they had been hoarding socks for years because they were not comfortable with putting them in the bin. So from there we've just seen tremendous response. And I think whilst some of the accidental great things that happened from us is when we launched our subscription offering, we didn't realise that part of it was to ensure recurring revenue, because that's important to business and, financial, commercial viability. But what a subscription actually meant as part of that was, because of, very clear, specific forecasting, we could manage overproduction. Mm-hmm. And we had been managing overproduction. So we were doing a lot already to ensure that we weren't contributing to textile landfill accidentally. So I'm not going to put my hand up and say that was actually the purpose of, going down that path, because the purpose was actually commercial, but, there was a sustainable element to that. Fast forward to today and where we are at, we recently launched Australia's first digital direct-to-consumer textile recycling program, which customers now around Australia can log onto our site, request a pickup, and we pick up their old textiles from their house, from their front doorstep, and we actually reward and recognise them and incentivise them for, making an impact on textile landfill. And, we have seen our business, grow by over 300%.
Wow.
In terms of, in the last 6 months. What we've seen as a result is these customers not only joining us as, eco-warriors or focused on sustainability, but their brand advocacy as a result has driven product sales up by 200+%. So kind of this motto of, we set out to make people look good and feel good, hence why we went with a premium product. We then applied a do-good for the planet, and, we've seen that, absolutely supported and endorsed by the community far and wide. So today, MANRAGS, as it stands, is on one side a digital direct-to-consumer recycling offering, and on the other side of that, we have an essentials brand, which we're now, on a journey to become a fully circular essentials brand, ensuring that our products never end up in landfill and that we have a second life solution for all of our products.
Mm. Okay, well, I have a ton of questions. So let's unpack your story, because it's just fascinating. And certainly I became interested in your business when I saw your do good part of the business in terms of taking these clothing pieces back. So first of all, let's start off with, at the very beginning, you talked about going to Egypt to get your premium quality socks. When people think about sourcing products, it's often to China. What made you decide to go to Egypt instead?
Yeah, so look, the reason for Egypt was purely a product quality. We looked at the market. We did a lot of research around, what other brands were offering, where their products were made and what they were doing. And, we knew that we had to differentiate ourselves. And we knew, the key reason for this was, I hate to admit this, and if Tina, my wife, was on this, she would tell you. But she was the one that was taking care of the laundry, and disappointingly, the products that she had bought me, because I don't buy many things for myself, but the products that she had bought me, even the premium, higher end, more costly product did not have a great wear and tear. They were equal to, not in all cases, but a product. And the example is a product that was $5 had the same wash cycle as a product that was that she had paid $40 for.
Wow.
So for us, it was a matter of, we want a premium product, and there was no one out there doing Egyptian cotton. And actually, there were a few people doing Egyptian cotton, but it was extremely overpriced. And through our research, we identified that actually there is no genuine reason besides logistics costs for the price hike.
You mentioned you don't normally buy anything for yourself, and I think a lot of men would be in your same position. Would you say that your customer is actually the man's partner?
Yes. Yep. That's definitely the case. And I'm an analytical man by nature, so 78% to be exact.
Okay. And do they buy it typically as a gift, or just because they're tired of buying bad, socks?
I think one is, there definitely is the gift giving. If you think about, the traditional, Christmas gift or Father's Day gift, socks and underwear, socks and jocks. But so that's one part of it. The other part of it is, if like myself, my responsibility is the dishes. So not saying that I don't add value in the maintenance and upkeep of the family home, but my wife normally does the washing. I'd imagine many others did, and at that point, their spouses, their partners would look at the quality and the condition of their items and go, this fella needs some new product here, because how can he continue to wear this?
Yeah.
I'll give you a scary and concerning statistic that the average life of one man's underwear globally is 7 years. So, yeah, that's...
Well, it tells you either the underwear is lasting longer than the socks, or perhaps what's underneath is not is not showing itself as readily as socks do when you're showing those off underneath your pants.
Yeah.
The product yourself, you did say you can manage overproduction because you have the subscription basis. Do socks, styles, and even underwear, do they go out of style for men?
I think what we found over the years is, we launched in the height of the colourful sock craze.
Uh-huh.
What we have found over the last probably 24 months is actually the market for colourful socks or quirky socks or whatever you want to call them is changing a lot. But also that, when we launched, we were focused on one demographic, one kind of, one specific target audience. It was a large audience, but it was one audience. What we've come to notice over the years is there is no one size fits all. We know that sometimes, some of our customers want subtlety. Others, if we were to give them anything close to subtle, there's uproar about it not being outrageous enough. So what we see is that it's very broad and it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. And so have you found that during this COVID-19 crisis, has your business in terms of the subscriptions, have they changed in terms of demand?
Look, there's been a few things that have happened during COVID. So one is demand, especially in the early days as everything was unfolding. I think with all the uncertainty, people were pulling back on any unnecessary spend, so to speak. People didn't know whether they, I think a large number of people don't know whether they have jobs, whether they can continue to afford this, where their finances were going to focus on. And I think we've seen a lot of people go, what's important to me and what's not. On the flip side of that, we have seen some impacts. We've also seen some of the impacts not as a result of the consumer, but driven by things like logistics. So with customers all over the world, we've had to pull back completely on international marketing.
Wow. Because
we're seeing products being held up at customs and borders for weeks and up to months. And that obviously that then drives a unfortunate negative customer experience, completely not at the fault of the brand or the company or anyone. It's just the way the world is. And so there's been a few impacts that we've seen there. On the flip side of that, what we've also seen in the silver lining of all of COVID is there's a lot more focus on, wow, the world is looking better. We can see Himalayas. We can see the Venice channels. You can see the water for the first time. So there's this growing view of, okay, well, we've done some damage. We're seeing that with everyone in lockdown and less cars on the road and less activity, less waste, less pollution, nature really coming to life. And so on the other side, we're seeing people go, well, the product that we're going to support with our dollar has to be doing good for the environment. So, has to have a consideration for their impact. So we're seeing a different swing of things, probably not as many subscriptions. We're seeing, people purchase product more than ever, subscriptions lower than ever.
Okay.
Or not ever, but, lower than, much more down than it was a long time ago.
Well, I guess if you can't think about the future as well as you used to, then it makes sense to just buy some socks when you need it rather than to wait on a monthly basis to receive it. So I guess that kind of makes a little bit sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I spoke to Camille Reed of the Australasia Circular Textile Association earlier in the year, and we talked a lot about the issues with textiles, and because a lot of these products are polyester and various synthetic materials, they are actually plastic. But the recycling process for textiles is very, very different than bottles, as you would know.
Yes.
Being that requires a chemical process rather than a mechanical one. And it's something we just don't have in Australia right now. We don't have that capacity. And on top of that, with the charity bins filling up well, actually right now, most of the charities aren't even taking collections of clothing. And I've also noticed the secondhand market overseas, where a lot of charity clothing does go, has also dried up because of the impact of COVID-19. Now, I'm really curious because you just said that in the last 6 months, your business has really jumped from the recycling side, probably because we don't have as many options to take things to charities. But you obviously would have to have still a demand for that material somehow. Otherwise, it's just going to stockpile in your own warehouses. So walk us through how that's working for you right now.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's a number of things happening in this space at the moment, and things are continuing to unfold day by day. I think the very first is, when we launched our, we had found a solution for socks. Socks is a very difficult product, and hence no one actually did it. And our sock recycling program was a world first. Textiles, yes, very difficult, a little bit easier than socks. Obviously, every product has a different course of action and a different second life opportunity. But we had, successfully done this with our socks, and so it made sense to launch the next thing. What we've seen over the last, few months since the digital textile recycling offering is, yes, charities and charity arms and, op shops and Second Life stores, they've had to close down and they're not taking collection. And the Association for the Charities and the charity bins have said, please stop putting things out on the street, because they're just going to go in the bin. Don't put them by the bins. By the time we get to them, they're potentially wet, and we just don't have the manpower or anything to deal with these at the moment. And then on to your other question around people, with the second life. As early as yesterday, we've been contacted by numerous charity organisations who collect second-hand clothes, saying, hi, our guys who we send things to are folding or no longer accepting any material because borders are closing down.
Yeah.
And, there's a larger issue behind this, and I think Circular Textile Association, Camille, I think may have been person or, one of the people in organisation that called this out, that charities are paying $13 million a year to send textiles to landfill. That's one side of things. The other side of things is actually all those, the people, offloading and sending these products overseas. It makes sense. A lot of the markets that they're going to are second life markets. They are either using all the product or not. In the case that they're not, they're going into landfill, just making it someone else's problem, unfortunately, right? And the other side of that is that damages industries in some of those regions. When they've got an influx of clothes. So I think some of these issues are well known. Some of them we don't like to speak about and we don't like to talk about. Some of them we just accept as it is what it is, and let's move on. We have a good way of turning a blind eye sometimes.
So what happens to your socks?
Yes.
Like where do your socks go to?
Yeah, so socks specifically are the least donated item in the world. So actually, from a Second Life perspective, there are a number of Second Life markets asking for socks. Western Europe is a great example. Thailand is another. There are economies asking for socks. Now, no one in the world actually donates socks or shares socks. So with all of our collection, we have there's 2 or 3 phases. The first phase is that we identify what's good for reuse versus what's not. And what's good for reuse is 20% wear. And what we've found from our sock recycling is actually a lot of people are donating brand new socks they simply just don't like. Otherwise, they would have ended up in the bin because they're not allowed to donate them to charities here in Australia. So we're seeing a large volume of very, very good quality socks or brand new socks that have a second life in markets which they are asking for. We don't actually charge them for that, and we don't make any money on that whatsoever. We just don't want to see it end up in landfill.
Yeah.
Socks, unfortunately, on the next side, there's only really 2 other options. One is that they are shredded and turned into things like insulation or underlay or any kind of material that can be used for cushioning or anything like that. There is one positive side where if socks are of a good material composition, so a high-grade cotton or a wool, they can then be sorted into colours and into materials to be shredded and turned into new yarn. So we're not seeing a lot of that in the socks because of, there's a number of plastics and polyesters and all that kind of thing that we're finding in these products. But in Australia, we've got a big wool sock market.
Yeah.
So a lot of those socks are actually really good to be turned into a new yarn. And there's, a number of people all over the world. We're working with Textile Recyclers Australia to facilitate that, who have a strategic partnership with probably one of India's oldest, most experienced textile recyclers, who have some of the leading technology that you were talking about earlier that's not very much available in Australia, to be able to identify that product and so separate the product and then turn it into the new yarn.
Okay. And for the shredded insulation or underlying, is that a product that is able to be processed here in Australia, or is that done overseas as well?
It's done overseas at the moment, but we are exploring some of our options. From our perspective, it's not just about let's keep them out of landfill, but if we can prevent, greenhouse emissions by not having to move them around the world to do this, then that's what we're focused on. So we are speaking to a number of people here in Australia at the moment, and I think as we sit in this kind of period where freight and logistics globally is difficult, we're talking to people here to say, well, how can we invest in converting this product here locally for you instead of you buying that raw material from overseas?
Yeah. Well, certainly there's a huge interest in local manufacturing at the moment, but whether or not that retains its focus and emphasis once the markets are open again, that I'm not sure about, just because of the cost of doing things here in Australia. Surely that's some of the challenges you're thinking about too.
No, absolutely. And I think, yes, you are 100% correct. And the only saving grace here is that some of the equipment and machinery that's been developed requires a little bit less overheads from a labour cost. And so an investment in machinery and technology has that saving off a longer term value add, but it does cost a lot up front. But I think that's where, as a country, and I'm not for not globalization, I think it's a great thing, but if as a country and as a government there is support, investment and endorsement to go down that path, I think we will see that local domestic, production and manufacturing open up. But who knows whether we will see that or whether it's just rhetoric that we're hearing.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned the fact that there is here in Australia, especially such a large wool sock industry, I guess.
Yep.
My question would be, right now you're using Egyptian cotton, but is there a place for something locally manufactured as well and within your product lines, given that there is wool available locally?
I guess the thing is with us from a product perspective and a brand audience, it's been the Egyptian cotton that's been our product.
Yep.
We have explored that it is a different audience, it is a different demographic to who we work with currently and who our audience is. So yes, there is absolute room for it. Is it our audience at the moment? Potentially, most likely not.
Okay.
But having said that, I'll share with you, can be your breaking news. We're about to release our first pair of recycled cotton socks.
Wow, okay.
So we're looking at things in a different light and saying, we want to, be truly circular as a brand, or truly circular I don't think actually exists. We want to be more circular. So we've done a lot of R&D and we've developed a 50% recycled cotton sock. We've developed a 20% recycled sock. We're very comfortable with the 20% one. The 50% probably needs a little bit more R&D, effort and time. And so we're most likely to launch that, I think, within the next 3 months. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, fantastic. You hear a lot about recycled polyester because it's such an easy thing to make out of plastic bottles.
Yep.
But the process of turning cotton back into cotton, usable cotton, from my understanding, it's a lot harder than making polyester. So it's fantastic that you guys are going down that pathway of because this also gives you a position, I guess, where your own socks specifically can be recycled back into more socks.
Yeah, correct. And that's part of our journey. And, I think it's very important that, we don't have all the answers and we don't know what we don't know, but we're learning and we want to continue to learn, and we want to change the way things are. And, we'll do that step by step, and we'll do it both with a focus on the triple bottom line. So we have to do it with our people as a consideration and our community. We have to do that with the planet as a consideration, but we also have to do it with profit as a consideration.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, unless we continue to demonstrate that sustainability can equal success, people will not jump on the bandwagon. And that's our goal. Our goal is to say, we're doing this, we're doing a little bit, we're doing as much as we can, we're going to do more and more, but, we need to ensure that, our commitment is that we continue to be able to pay people's wages and, turn a profit, because other brands won't follow suit and other companies won't entertain sustainability if they can't see, larger corporates, if they can't see the financial benefits. So we need to do that. If we were not for profit, it might make sense, but we don't hide that we are, and I think that's why people are responding to this, and we're seeing other brands want to collaborate and partner with us. I think that's a big part here. Very important to say we don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, but we're learning, and we'll continue to learn and innovate as we go.
Well, financial viability is the number one requirement of even a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
So for you guys to make these investments into research and trying to become more sustainable, I know it's not a cheap option for any business, much less a charity. So it's great to see you do this. I am questioning, though, this move into greater textiles, because it makes sense when you have as you say, a sock and jock business. But to go ahead and go to that next step when there aren't a lot of options right now for reuse of clothing when all the charity bins are not open. So what made you do that, and especially when you have to think about financial viability?
Yes, we don't collect for free.
Okay.
Consumer pays for the pickup, and that covers predominantly freight, logistics, warehousing, that's all encompassed, it's kind of the OPEX stuff at the top.
Uh-huh.
A consumer pays for that. And what we found is, some of the stuff that's coming back, a lot of it, I think, anywhere between 60 to 70% actually has a reuse life.
Okay.
I think there's a very big difference here where we're seeing a significant amount of new things come through, anywhere between 5 to 10%, which, hurts a little bit when you think about what consumerism and materialism and all that type of thing. But, we're not trying to solve for that. We just want to see that it doesn't end up in the ground. Off the back of that, we've launched and forged, I think in the last 2 weeks, over 15, signed, sealed, delivered, commercially viable partnerships, which sees organisations take this product and reuse it for a number of, for whatever they are. So, for example, we've got a group who uses everything that we collect for children of reuse, and they are then sharing it to children in need, families in need, new mums. We've had a partner who has said that they want every single jacket that we collect because we're entering the winter. Yeah. Or we've entered winter now. We're in winter. And there is a lot of homelessness, and there's not enough jackets in this country to support them. So they've said, please, any jackets, we'll take all the jackets. Then we've started to see some other exciting things happen where we're working with one of Australia's probably most renowned sustainable fashion designers who is collecting all of our denim, whether it can be reused or not, to turn that into a new product.
Yeah.
So we're finding solutions domestically, and there's no lies. Where things aren't great, they're either, turned into rags, or they're shredded and turned into those poorer products of, insulation and underlay. Uh-huh. But there's also a lot of stuff that's happening in the world at the moment. We've been given a heads up of a very expensive machine that can turn anything into anything with the addition of a chemical. So there is things happening, and, we're working our butts off to try and forge as many relationships to ensure that none of this stuff ends up in landfill, and that we, can do as much of it here domestically as possible.
It's fantastic that you're kind of becoming the hub for this, when normally you would expect a St. Vincent de Paul or a Salvation Army to be in the midst of this. And to see a for-profit company that, that wasn't your sole purpose when you started this project. But it shows that, you're finding ways to make sure that these clothing pieces go to different places. I actually did an interview with Barbara Matthews of Recycled Recreation a few months ago, and she, too, is doing all sorts of interesting things with secondhand outdoor gear. So that could be clothing, it could be equipment and such. And she was establishing partnerships with brands that may have a defect in a product, like a missing button or a zipper or something, and they could actually repair it and then resell it at secondhand. So it sounds like you guys are kind of working in parallel lines, but obviously you have a much broader gamut of potential textiles that you can work with. So that's exciting, but it almost sounds like a totally different business for you.
Yeah, and this is where our model's a little bit different. We have two arms to the business. One is the recycling side, and that sees us forging a number of collaborations and partnerships focused on that. But the other side is, what we're seeing is, through doing the right thing, building up brand advocacy, and supporting growth on the other side of the business, which is our product, and helping us go, well, let's continue to invest in both sides of the business. And they kind of go hand in hand. And I think that's probably what makes us quite unique, because I think if you did the recycling thing on your own, you would be at a loss. Yeah, I think that's quite simple. Fortunately for us, we're multi-tiered, and with a multi revenue streams, we're seeing successes early days, and no doubt we'll see more, and there's no doubt we'll be able to do a lot more. But yeah, we have to do this. I mean, the example I give most people is when we launched the brand. Tina launched it from the bedroom with a 6-month-old boy on her lap. Boy's 5 now, and my daughter is 3. And in 10, 20 years' time, will they be celebrating our success, or will they be saying, what did you do to make this a better planet for me? And they have to go hand in hand. It can't just be, I have have food on the table and I have a nice, roof over my head. I'm very fortunate, because they'll turn around one day and go, yeah, but you contributed to this overproduction and this textile landfill impact. And so for us, it's like I said, it's a journey, and it's something that we have to do, and we have to treat it as it has to be commercially viable, and it has to be good for the planet.
I think a lot of people I speak to have thought about their children when they're thinking about their own impact and mission statement for their business. I noticed, Michael, you actually started off in banking. And when you were talking about doing those long weekends to Egypt without anyone knowing, it's a really interesting transition to see someone who has this banking background to completely get into the sock business. What made you decide to make that kind of transition in your career?
When we hit our first, I think it was 1,500 subscribers, and we saw the real potential in MANRAGS, coupled with the birth of my boy, it was, okay, well, this thing that we set up out of the bedroom for a little bit of fun actually has some legs. Yeah, I mean, that was it really. If we were to take this seriously, then I had to, commit to it. And, I still enjoy, the thinking back and thinking about all my, executive mates laughing that I was leaving the banking world to focus on socks. And, it's an interesting, it was an interesting change. I was working in the strategy and marketing divisions of the bank in a number of areas, all boring. Let's talk about insurance, superannuation, home loans, all that stuff. it was challenging to come into a business which you owned and having to do the simplest of, smallest tasks. But, you kind of have to do everything. Whereas in the bank, I was supported by, thousands of different divisions and people all focused on their own, expertise or specialist area. And then you walk into a business and you go, oh, okay, well, I have to do this and I have to do this because it's not going to get done itself. I can't send this to someone to do for me.
Yeah.
I can't allocate this out. So that was a challenge coming across. But, I think I learned a lot in my, 11 or 13 years at the bank, in banking and finance, and, things that I've taken away today. And a lot of things that I also learned, I've said, well, that's not the kind of thing that I want to apply in our company as it stands today or ever. So, I think one of those things is being so large and having a lot of, in banking terms, it was red tape, wanting to launch something that would take, 18 months and 3,000 decks to get some funding for.
Yeah.
That type of thing is we're in a smaller, more closer team. We're a lot more agile, a lot more nimble in what we can do. And, that becomes part of the spirit of the company.
Well, if anything from banking, thinking about all my mates in banking, at least you had your demographic nailed because you probably had all the pretty socks underneath the suits of your colleagues.
Yeah, look, we do some interesting things at MANRAGS, and one is that we have an annual survey, and we gift those people who, partake in the survey something for taking part, and we learn a lot about our customer because, you can only learn so much from, and everything's quite confusing, from all your media channels and that type. So we ask a lot of questions, and actually I think it was in our first year, and when we had launched, we had intended to launch socks, jocks and ties. And in our first survey, we identified that only 19% of our subscribers ever wore a tie.
Oh, interesting.
And so they helped form the direction of the company. Otherwise, we would have gone and invested in a product that, I don't know, you probably see 2% of, corporates wearing these days. So,
yeah.
But also from that, I think, you mentioned, we had our target demographic lockdown. We were pretty amazed by what we found in that first survey, where I think it was around 30% of our customer was in the medical profession industry.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So it was quite interesting because I thought, oh no, it's all going to be corporate people, but no, there's a lot of doctors in there and a lot of people with their scrubs and wanting to add a bit of flair to their scrubs.
Oh, for sure. When you're in uniform all the time, it might be the only way you can express yourself, right?
Yeah.
Oh, incredible. Well, if somebody who's listening right now wanted to get involved in maybe take a massive career change like you did and create something sustainable in terms of a business, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think probably have a lot of advice. Look, I think, the biggest thing is to have a go, test the market, think about, identify and do a fair bit of research, but don't sit on research forever and then turn on an MVP and learn from your customer. We've made many, many mistakes along the way. And if we had waited for the perfect product and if we had waited for the perfect website and, if we had waited, we would never have launched. And, it's about asking for that feedback after, you've launched a product and just learning and growing from there. That's not do it once and set and forget. There are, times throughout the journey where you do go, okay, we're onto this now. Let's just focus on this for a little while. But that shouldn't remove any hunger. But yeah, look, the truth is we started a quirky, colourful sock subscription. And if you had asked many people, a lot of people, they would have said it was silly and you're out of your mind. A lot of people continue to say that when I put my hand up and said, see you later, banking friends.
Yeah.
But the journey has taken us to where we are today. It's all part of the ride. So my advice would be do a little bit of research, turn it on, and ask for feedback and just, refine.
Good advice. Michael, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we go?
Look, I just wanted to, based on the fact that your podcast was focused on plastics, there was one thing that I wanted to share with you, which is part of our journey. When we first launched MANRAGS, we launched and we sent our product in plastic packaging. And part of the journey for us, as we learned more and more around the impacts of plastic, we moved from a plastic to an aluminium, which became recyclable. And then over the course of that, we've moved into completely recyclable cardboard made from recycled paper. So, it hasn't been us just looking at our product only, but, it's all facets of it. And that's been part of the journey. And actually, that was a journey before we started going down the path of circular product and looking at how we can become a little bit more circular. And to give you an example of how particular we became about this, in 80% of socks around the world, a little plastic pin holds the socks together. Most of the time, it holds the label to the sock.
Right.
And then, both socks together. We went as far as saying, well, we're going to make our label detachable to ensure that we no longer need to use this little piece of plastic pin to hold the socks together, because it makes no sense. And actually, it was advised to us, we had said, we've gone plastic free on our packaging, and they said, yes, but you've still got this little piece of plastic that holds the socks together.
Yeah.
We've gone, geez, we missed that. But it demonstrates that people are responsive to, the changes that you're making. And, most people will congratulate you. Others will tell you that they don't like it, but that's okay. And also you'll have other people that go, that is awesome, that's fantastic. Here's a little bit more feedback. And it's helped us grow and evolve. And so packaging was probably what set us on a journey of going, okay, so we've got this fully recyclable packaging now. Nothing we send to customers actually needs to end up in the bin except their product. Let's make that product circular.
Yeah. That's terrific to see that you guys have really thought through from cradle to grave all aspects of your product, including the packaging. In fact, the show that just came out just recently, we talked about packaging and all the various things that are going with it right now, and including the complexities of people that aren't used to doing online shopping and what they have to think about in terms of that unboxing process. So it's fantastic to hear that you guys were ahead of the curve on that. And now look at you now, you're doing so much more with the reuse and recycle space. Michael, if people want to find out more about MANRAGS, what's the best way to reach out and touch you guys? manrags.com.au. We also have the manrags.com. So, jump online, have a look at all of our products, send us some feedback. We're always looking to partner with people, especially, here in Australia where we can at the moment. I'm not saying that we don't want to partner internationally. We do have partners, but, if there's, any partnership opportunities, hit us up. If there is anything that, anyone out there in the textile recycling space that, wants to contribute and, can support us in any way, we're only a tight-knit team here, and we're learning as we go, and we'll take any support we can. But manrags.com. Great. Michael, I want to thank you, first of all, for your time today. I know that things must be really crazy with all these changes and new projects you're working on. I'm finding this absolutely inspirational to see someone who's taken such a huge career change, as you say, having to tell your buddies in the banking industry that you're going to start making socks. That had to be a hard conversation, and to take a bet on yourselves, both you and your wife Tina, to do this would have taken significant courage and determination to make it work. But for you guys to also realize that your own products had a environmental output or impact, and that you couldn't just stand by and let that happen. You created a model around your original products, and now you've branched out well beyond that point. I've read somewhere that you had over 30,000 kilos of textiles saved from landfill already, and it's just incredible to see a business that's truly looking at the full cycle of their own products and trying to make sure that what they're making is not ending up in landfill, but also looking at other products that their own customers may be thinking about throwing away as well. So it's been brilliant just to have this conversation. And thank you for the work that you and your team is doing at MANRAGS.
Thank you, Tammy, and thanks for having me on the show. Love it.
Cheers. Thanks for joining me for this episode. To see the links and show notes, check out plasticsrevolution.com. And if you found anything interesting or helpful at all, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the show and to tell others. Stay tuned next week as I chat to another innovator, changemaker, or fellow entrepreneur who's leading the plastics revolution. This is Tammy Ven Dange. Be kind to animals and Mother Nature. This show is produced by Johnny Pushkus. Music by Joseph McDad.